So I got caught short for work and I had to go and buy a shirt, and so I bought this one. Job from Primark, £6. It is actually quite good quality. Very much a credit to the 8-year-old Bangladeshi child who stitched it. But the thing that I notice is that we talk about slavery in this country, and we talk about like what we or how people like years ago would have benefited from slavery, and how we as a country benefited from slavery. And I keep coming back to the modern era with it, always. So years ago, somebody would have gotten, so in the 15th century, sugar became quite popular. Well, 16th century, I should say, became quite popular, and finally everybody could afford things like fruit and sugar, and so people got a lot of it. They started to eat lots of it, and the teeth started to rot naturally. And but people kind of like, they knew that it wasn't produced in a very nice way. They knew that it was produced halfway around the world using slave or indentured labour of some description. So they didn't really care, because they were that disconnected from it. If they'd been to the plantations, if they'd been to see how it's made, they would have obviously had a bit of a problem with it. Probably would have campaigned for it to not, for just it not to be made that way. And so, kind of like, when people make out as if people were for the slave trade, I don't think they ever were. I think they were complacent in it. And I think that the reason why they were complacent in it was because they were detached from the horrors of it, and they were, I'll say detached from the horrors of it, and as well because they knew that they were getting cheap products as a result of it. And it continues to this day that is the view that we have in the Western world, is that Primark have not factored in paying a Bangladeshi child minimum wage for this. Because if they had, they would have been paying somebody in Britain minimum wage to produce it. Which I would personally support, by the way. I really think that if they were to open up a factory in the UK and produce British-made clothes, I wouldn't have the ethical kind of like qualms that I have from purchasing this stuff. Bangladesh is a huge polluter as well, but nobody's. But by the by, it's like everything that you purchase today will have some element of, if not slave labour per se, highly exploitative labour. So, your iPhone is made in China. They've got a net around the factory to stop the workers from killing themselves. It might not be slavery, because we give them a wage, but it's hugely exploitative. And so they're going to turn around in 100 or 200 years' time and say, my ancestors were exploited so that you could have an iPhone. And so I want you to think of it as to how you think of it now. You know that this goes on, you know it happens, but you're happy with it. Well, not happy with it, but you're complacent about it. You're complacent about it because you want your iPhone to cost, £500 rather than £2,000. You're complacent about it because you want your shirt from Primark to cost £6 rather than £60. And that's the thing, that we have this complacency because of the consumerist nature of the problem. And it does result in exploitation. It results in terrible exploitation. And so it's kind of like, when somebody prattles on about slavery in the historical context, I would say, that's done, that's past. There's nothing you can do about that now. There's no way that you can rectify the problems that caused. What you can do is you can look at what you can do now to stop modern slavery. Biggest one, I would say, stop eating chocolate. That is usually produced by horrific slave labour along the Gold Coast in Africa. Don't look at what has happened in the past. Don't look at what has happened historically. It is important to learn from that, and it's so important to learn from that. But look at what you can do now. Look at the change that you can make now, so that when your descendants look back, they'll be able to say, oh, well, this is what my ancestors did. They took the initiative, they learnt a lesson from history, and they decided that maybe they weren't going to buy that shirt from Primark. Maybe they weren't going to buy that stuff that was made in China. Maybe they weren't going to buy that stuff that was made in India or Bangladesh or wherever. You know, maybe they took the initiative and said that manufacturing should be coming home. And yeah, okay, that means maybe you'll have to go without that cheap piece of tat, but you'd be substituting it for quality products. Look at what we can do now rather than horrors of the past.